This is Leavetherest, and I'm Caleb Bridges. And today's topic is the dangerous, delusional, and nasty word, mine. You know, we just finished the Christmas season, and hopefully you were able to keep Christ as the main focus of the Christmas season. But you know, a part of Christmas for many of us is gift giving. It's something that we've kind of made into a big part of the Christmas season. And you know, I was sitting at home with my family and we were opening gifts, and I kind of took note of my youngest nephew as he was opening a gift that my brother gave him. And the interesting thing I noticed was that as soon as he opened this gift, the first word that came out of his mouth was mine. You know, and it wasn't so much that caught my attention as much as what happened as soon as my brother, who was trying to help him, was trying to show him how the toy worked, took the toy from him for just a second, and my nephew was ready to break down and throw a fit. He basically came and took the toy away and said, "No, this is mine." And, you know, it just struck me. And I think the interesting thing, and before I go any further, the thing that I just immediately was convicted of and realized was, hey, I know I'm noticing this in a young child. I'm getting to see this sinful side of my nephew, who's young, kind of come out in a raw form because of he's young. But the truth is that I knew that same reality was at work in my own life as an adult. And I think the convicting thing is I realized, yeah, it may look different, it may sound different. In fact, sometimes people may not even know about it. But that same spirit that in my nephew was screaming, "No, this is mine," was at work in my own life in different ways. And I think that the really sad thing about it is that this idea of something being mine totally negates the truth that all things are a gift to us from God, and that we possess and own nothing. And I think that the reality of that truth frees me and enables me to give my entire life and all of my possessions and everything I have back to God. But until I can understand that, then I'll live under this delusion that things belong to me. And if they're mine, then they're mine to do with however I please. If it's my money, if it's my job, if it's my future, if it's my preferences, who are you to tell me what I should do? Who are you to stand in the way of me and what I want? You know, I think that's the attitude that we may not realize we have, but I know that I've struggled with. You know, one of the ways that I see this at work in my own life is with time itself. For me, sometimes I can get so frustrated when I feel like someone or something is stealing my time. I feel like, oh man, they're wasting my time. The reason I feel like that is because I feel like I own that time. It's mine. Who are you to take it from me? And just like my nephew, I want to immediately become angry and feel like something's being taken from me. And I think as adults, we do it with a lot of things. As I mentioned, I think we do it with money. We do it with our careers, with our futures, with our preferences, with all kinds of things. But we take possession of things, and that possession, it keeps me from being able to see it as a gift and to develop a sense of and heart of even gratitude and thankfulness for that. It's like we struggle to separate those things that are under our possession, that God has put in our control, from being ours that we've created. We come under this assumption that, look what I've done, look what I've created, look what I've made. Whether those are physical things like money or a house or a car or other possessions, or whether those are natural abilities, whether that's my looks or whether that's my intellect or whether that's something else physically I can do. There's this natural almost tendency within us to claim things as being our own. And I think there's a real great danger in that. And so I was just really convicted of that as I watched my nephew, and then as I thought about it within myself, I was just even more convicted, you know, of how true that unfortunately is for me myself. And what it made me really start thinking about was the parable of the good steward that we read about in Matthew 25. And if you're unfamiliar with the parable, I'll just kind of give you a real quick overview of it. Basically, the parable that Christ tells is about this master who goes away on this long trip. And before he does, he goes to 3 of his servants, and he gives each of those 3 servants a different amount of money. And so he goes away for this long journey, and he comes back and he says, how have you invested, or what have you done with the money that I gave you? And so the first servant says, hey, you gave me, this amount of money, and look, I've doubled it. And so the master says, well done, my good and faithful servant. And basically, to cut to the end of it, the last servant comes along, and the master says, what have you done with the money I entrusted to you? And the servant says, I didn't do anything with it. I buried it. I can give it back to you. It's exactly what you gave me. And the master says, you wicked servant. And basically the moral or the principle of the story that Christ is getting at is that he's entrusted us with many things. He's given us many gifts, many talents, both material, physical, and spiritual, and even mental. And he's wanting to know what we're going to do with it. Am I going to take the gifts God's given me, and am I going to claim them as being my own and use them for my own benefits? Am I going to go bury them and just do nothing with them? Or am I going to be faithful? Am I going to be a good and faithful steward of those things? Even the word steward means a person who's managing the finances, the accounts, the property of another person. So I think that's an important word to use for us as Christians, is that we are stewards, and that everything that's been given to us is not our own, but we're stewards of those things. I'm a steward of my time. I'm a steward even of my physical body. Like, I am a temple of God. Like, I personally have to give account for what I do with myself, with my money, and with my time. And I think when we can adopt that kind of mindset, it really can help us begin to see how important it is for me to offer back to God everything I have. And I think that's what pleases God most. I think what pleases him most is when he sees his servants take the things that he's given them and say, you know what, Lord, here's my life right back to you. You've blessed me financially. I want to give that right back to you and right back to others who might be in need. You've given me this. I'm going to give this back to you. So using everything God has given us and just giving it back. And I think what really enables us to have that mindset to give back is really understanding it as a gift. Because when I think about it as being mine, there's that natural selfish tendency where if it's mine, then it's about me. And I'm the only person that it has to do with. But when I see it as a gift, well, then it kind of takes that mine part out of it, right? One of the things I even notice is that if I've ever been blessed, let's say somebody gave me a large financial gift or something like that, right after that, I'm very likely to help somebody else out or give some money away. Why? Because I feel like that money isn't really mine. So it's easy for me to give away because I feel like, oh, well, somebody just gave this to me. It's the same as true as whenever somebody is really merciful or forgiving. Maybe I made a big mistake and they were just like, don't even worry about it, Caleb. Well, it's a lot easier for me to walk away from that and be merciful or forgiving to somebody else because, man, I feel like, wow, this person was just really merciful to me. So I think the moral of that story or that truth is when I can maintain a mindset in which I understand that my whole life and everything I have is a gift from God to me, then it's much easier for me to give that back to him and back to other people because I don't feel like it belongs to me. It takes me out of the picture, if you will. And I think that is probably the most important thing. Just to read a few quick scriptures to you. John 3:27 says, John answered and said, a man can receive nothing unless it has been given to him from heaven. And then in 1 Corinthians 4:7, and I really like this one, it says, for what gives you the right to make such a judgment? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift? I think the really convicting part of that is that who am I to say that anything belongs to me? The most dangerous place I can get is thinking that I'm self-made, that I've done all of this, I've collected all these things, I've worked hard, I've made myself, I've done this, therefore I get to do with it as I please. When I really believe that God's given me all things and that everything I have is a gift from Him, I can't boast. There's no room for it. All I can do is give thanks and gratitude towards God, and I think that's what happens when I really believe that the things that I have are given to me. It cultivates within me a heart of gratitude and thankfulness, and it takes out of me this heart of pride or arrogance that thinks that I personally have done anything. I think that's really one of the most important things that we can do as Christians, is really learn how to cultivate that understanding that all things are a gift from God. One of the things that I'll just kind of close with is just the idea of a gift itself. The very nature of a gift reveals my lack of ownership. So if something's been given to me, it means that I didn't own it. So the more I understand that life is a gift, then the more I understand that there's a giver, and that giver is God. And I think the second part, the interesting thing about the word or the concept of a gift, is the very nature of receiving a gift reveals my need or my dependency. It's something I did not have. And so understanding that I am always dependent upon God, and that dependence is a good thing. God created us to be dependent on one another, and especially on Him. So I would just encourage you, next time something happens or you feel that creeping sensation coming over you, that something is yours, or that the desire to say mine, just remember that everything's been given to you as a gift. And as that idea kind of takes hold, what I think you'll realize is that you'll really learn how to have a sense of thankfulness and gratitude. And hopefully that will cause you to want to give even more sacrificially back to others and back to God. So I hope this video has been encouraging. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.